And without further ado, please welcome Patricia Heitz to the show. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you so much. I'm so
Oh,
glad to be here.
yes, I am so too. And I love your story. And I love, we have similar ideas on healing, on Louise Hay, on mind over matter, on limiting beliefs, on childhood. I have two children, 12 and 15, and I teach children law of attraction. I teach them healing. I teach them a lot of Louise Hay, mirror work, I am statements, affirmations, all the things that you discovered in your life. I teach and believe in 100%. So to understand that's where you're coming from, I thought, perfect, a like-minded woman on my path, and your journey is so interesting. And I think when people understand that we are so powerful and we can do or have anything and heal our bodies with our minds, and the way we can get rid of our limiting beliefs, and what really is, holding people away from that that oneness that we all are, and that we could take those negative thoughts or those beliefs that we've had in our mind, and for who knows how long, but to come into this life and go, wow, look what I have. I'm healthy. I am strong. I'm beautiful and so powerful. But to bring people back to that, I want to go to your childhood, because I feel like I really understand, and why I believe so strongly about empowering children is to their limiting beliefs are, not so ingrained by the time they're like in their teens. Is really who I love to work with. So it's not as hard to get them to switch their thinking and remove those thoughts, and to change the words they speak and the thoughts they think. And so when you were a child and you were raised in kind of a harsh, like a more of a kind of a violent environment, and where you were, what beliefs were you subconsciously programming into your mind?
Well, that I was never enough, that no matter what I did, it wasn't enough, or I just wasn't good, or in our home, it was nobody really talked about good stuff. It was always bad stuff that was talked about. So you're just always mindful of, making sure that you do everything the way you need to do, so you don't get beat and or chastised, or in some way beat down verbally or physically. So I think the belief that I grew up with was that I just wasn't enough. I just wasn't, there was really no self-esteem or self-love. On top of that, I am 6'1", and I was probably,
oh wow,
almost that by the time I was in 8th grade.
huh.
I was heads above all of my friends, and that just made me feel very freakish. And of course the kids would make fun of me and stuff. It's always about, did I play basketball, which I actually didn't, because I was kind of spastic that way. And so it was, I felt like not only was I not good internally, like I just wasn't a good person, I also was freaky looking. And that because my father was an alcoholic, you never knew what you were going to find when you came into the house. So I didn't really bring friends home. I was the oldest of 5 children, so we didn't really bring a lot of friends around to our house, because you didn't really know, what was going to happen. It was volatile all the time. So there was all those 3 things coming at me that made me feel different, that made me feel less than, that, or I shouldn't say made me, I assumed, I perceived that all of these things going on around me, who I looked like in the world, that was all about me not being enough or freakish.
Right. So when you enter the life outside of that home and you go into, did you go to college? Are you like venturing out into the world now with these beliefs, like
Yes.
really strongly?
Well, luckily for me, the worst part of all of that was when I was from childhood. up to 8th grade. And then when I graduated from 8th grade, I was able to go to a high school where there was a lot more people. There was a lot, the world opened up more. And I was able to find new friends that I felt like, oh, well, maybe they won't look at me as being freaky because I was with the same kids from kindergarten to 8th grade. So that really opened up the world for me. And I was able to meet different people and feel a little bit more like I belonged. So I just tried to stay out of my home as much as possible and go to other people's houses and, whatever, and got through those 4 years. And then after I got out of school and I went out into the world, I kind of had a little bit of a better self-esteem because I knew I had to move forward. It was up to me. I was very independent in that I knew that I wanted to put what had happened in my childhood behind me and go out in the world and make a new life. So I was very forward moving and finding people, jobs, situations that were better for me. It wasn't until I got into adulthood and then started to self-sabotage when things were really good, that those beliefs that I had stuffed about not being enough really reared their head, because when I would get to a place of success, I would have to create something that would create a crash in my life, because that belief that I wasn't enough didn't go away. It was still there. It felt unfamiliar to me to be in a successful place. I can remember feeling that, like, wow, this feels weird. And I think that subconsciously there was something in me that said, this isn't what you believe. So you have to match what you believe with your environment, has to match what you believe.
Right.
Everything has to match. So my environment, was that I wasn't enough. So I had to be a failure. So I would have to crash at something. And my life went up and down like that. And then I had to find something else to survive. So I would crash and then I'd have to survive, because that was my title. I was a survivor. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed with kidney cancer that I thought, this is enough. Like, this is like too much. Like, what is it about me? Like, what's going on? And I studied every mind, body, wellness audio or book that I could find to really understand, how did this disease come into my body? And what I found was that it was really the core and the foundation of everything that had happened to me in my life, my ups, my downs, my crashes, my self-sabotage. Now manifesting kidney cancer was really about what I believed about myself, which was not very much.
When you looked in Louise Hay, the You Can Heal Your Life book, which I love and I give to all my friends, what does kidney cancer represent with Louise Hay in that book?
Rage and anger.
Ah, okay.
So, I mean, that when I read that felt like an electric shock went through my body. The realization that anger that I had been holding on to since childhood, that I had been storing in that area of my body, and that it literally was eating away at me and causing a tumor, that was just mind-blowing to me. That's when I thought, if I could do that because I hated myself, what could I do if I learned how to love myself? Like, if I'm that powerful that I could create a disease in my body, what could I do if I really believed in myself? And I was hooked on energy work and understanding what we do with the energy that we produce, whether it's good, whether it's bad, what happens when you create negative energy in your body, which I knew firsthand was, for me, it was kidney cancer, but then how to turn that around and create a higher vibrational positive energy. Like, what can that do for you in your life? And luckily for me, since then, I have been able to turn my life around. There's no more self-sabotaging. There's no more, if something negative happens, it's very mild, and I accept it and I embrace it and take the lesson that I need to learn from it and then move on. And my life is, I'm not even the same person that I was 19 years ago when I was diagnosed with kidney cancer.
Yeah. So you got married before that, right? So you have children when you get
Yep.
diagnosed. Go there.
So I was diagnosed and I thought, oh my God, like my children are young, I can't die. Kidney cancer is kind of like pancreatic cancer in that it's a silent killer because you usually don't know that you have it until it's metastasized someplace else in your body. And I thought, I can't die. I have two young children. And so I thought, I have to, every day I kept thinking to myself, well, the big part was my father-in-law had died from this very same disease only 10 months prior to me.
Yeah, that is amazing. Crazy. Not amazing, but crazy.
So it was crazy. I thought when they said I had kidney cancer, I thought, wait a minute, how could this be? What's the connection? My father-in-law died from that 10 months ago, and now I have it. Like, there's got to be a connection here. This can't be a coincidence. And that's when I knew, my intuition told me there was something more to this that I needed to know. There was something more I needed to find. So I kept saying to myself every day, I need to find the answer. I need to find the answer. God, help me see what I need to see and know what I need to know about this. And when my father-in-law was diagnosed, the backstory about my belief about that was when my father-in-law was diagnosed, and it looked like, I mean, it took 2 years of the cancer being metastasized, showing up at different parts of his body and metastasizing in different parts, and then they would radiate it and he would be okay, and then it would pop up someplace else. So his dying process took several years. And at some point during that process, he told my husband and I that he was going to be leaving us a substantial amount of money that he had inherited from his father. And at the time, we were living in a small little teeny bungalow house. And I thought, oh, yay, we can buy a new house. But I did this whole devil angel struggle with myself where when I thought, oh, when he dies, we're going to get money to buy a house. And then I would say, oh, I would shame myself like, oh, I can't believe you're thinking that. That's so terrible. This man has to die for you to get what you want. And so I went back and forth with this. I can't wait to, oh my gosh, you're a terrible person for thinking this. And when my father-in-law died, I don't think that he was in the ground a month. And I had my husband out looking at houses to build. And we built a new house in a new development. And we moved in July of 2002. And 2 weeks later is when I was diagnosed with kidney
Oh,
cancer.
wow. Huh.
Wasn't in the house 2 weeks.
Huh.
And it was when I was reading the Louise Hay book that it said, the question was, why do you need to have this? And I realized I had been storing that negative energy in my body since childhood, but I had to manifest it into kidney cancer specifically because I had to punish myself for getting this house on the death of my father-in-law.
Wow.
And I realized, like, it was like an electric bolt went through me, like every cell in my body was buzzing when I realized what I had done. And I realized, like, that was insane that I could be powerful, that I create that. And that's when I realized, if I'm that powerful, I can turn this around. What could I do and make my life easy?
Right.
It was the turning point for me.
Huh. So you get into this Louise Hay, you start studying energy work, and you're like, if I can create this kidney cancer with my mind, I can get rid of it.
Yes.
So what are you going down this rabbit hole of books and like holistic? What do you do?
When I was recuperating from having my right kidney taken out, I started walking every day. And back then in 2002, it was Walkman, with your little CD player,
Yep.
and I would listen to Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Deepak Chopra. I mean, the list goes on. Anybody and everybody that I could find that was talking about the mind-body connection and what you think about and what you believe and how it manifests in your body. And so for like 17 years, every day I walked listening to I think I've listened to almost everybody on the planet who has put audio, because every day for all those years, I walked unless the weather was really bad. And so I took all of that information that when I started applying that to my life and really changing my belief system and really recognizing what I had done to self-sabotage and really healing those wounds, like questioning my beliefs, like, what does that really mean? Is that really true? No, that's not really true. And really start to look at who I was in the world, that and what I had to give of value. What were my gifts? My gifts were X, Y, Z. And I started to focus on those things that I knew were my gifts. And when I focused on the attributes about myself that I liked and that were my gifts, I found that the world expanded more in that way. And so I realized that if I focus on what's the best about me and just realize that what I thought was the worst about me came from other people's beliefs, it came from misperceptions as a child that I thought that's what that meant. It came from the beliefs from my parents. It came from the beliefs of being in a dysfunctional household. And I realized that all of those beliefs were just not true. And then I started focusing on the things about myself that were gifts and started really focusing and utilizing them, my creativity, my writing skills, my belief, my sense of intuition, and my feel for people, my feel for things. And I realized I could really help people by sharing what I have learned about this whole process. So that's when I took all of that information for like 17 years and I wrote it all down, and I created a workbook for other people to actually, my thought was, I don't want people to get to a point where they have to ask themselves these very important questions because they have a life-threatening illness or because, you know, something devastating happens to them. I would like to be able to share all of this information for people to do before they get to the devastating parts of their life or before they get to these life crisis moments. So it's a workbook. It's not just like a Louise Hay book or, you know, other people's opinion and advice. This is more about the reader because it asks questions and it forces the reader to answer questions to look inside. It's kind of like Louise Hay's mirror work, except it's done with by asking these questions. And then we take the answers to those questions and move on and help that person who's going through the workbook define what is good about them, and really kind of takes them through the process that I went through to find out who I was, what my value in the world was, what my gifts were, and how can I share this, and how can I use all of this to make my life better.
Yes, I love that. You know, I'm in a course right now, and my listeners know because I talk about it all the time. It's called the Ascension Experience, and I'm in month 5. It's oneness, but at the beginning, it's called alignment, the first month. And, you know, it's a really deep dive into the limiting beliefs. This whole course is about limiting beliefs, but the first month is when you realize to become aligned to create this life of beauty that you're talking about, this magical life, and your vibration, and keeping your vibration high when you're in alignment, because that's goes hand in hand, right?
Yep.
But to understand that these limiting beliefs that you've been programmed and are so strong in your mind and your everything, every decision you make and every judgment you take, and all the, you know, just the awareness of knowing what they are. And to get to this place of neutrality is what I've been learning, like, gosh, no one to trigger you, like when something triggers you, you're like, wait, Ashley, that's a limiting belief. We do these in my classes where you're like, whoa, what is that? Why is that triggering me? Because it's in me.
Yeah.
So to understand and then stop living with those triggers, it's like this, it's like that, hello, life, the windows are open.
It's freedom. It's like flying. It's kind of indescribable. I don't really have words. It's just so, you just love getting up every day.
Oh, so love it. I get up and say, I get to get up and be this person.
Yes, exactly. You don't even have to, like, I could have a day where I don't have anything scheduled, but I just love getting up and being me. It's right. Just, it's such freedom.
How did you raise your kids? You have two?
I have two.
How old are they?
My daughter, my daughter is 34 and my son is 26. So my daughter, I was part of my daughter's life, I was not in a good place. I was very, very angry when she was little. So, she grew up with some issues, but I've worked with her and, she's in a much better place now. She's turned her limiting beliefs around. And my son, he just, he was 6 when I was diagnosed. So he was he was much younger. So I could really influence him in a better way earlier on in his life than I was able to do with my daughter. And they're both, very happy. My daughter is married and just had a baby 4 months ago. So on the first time.
Oh, neat.
Just graduated from Tulane Architecture School, and now he's out there earning a great living as an architect and loving life. And just, I'm very proud of both of them. They're very happy, well-functioning adults in the world.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
I like them as adults. They're fun to be around. And, so it's like really my life has turned around. If I had not turned my life around, I just wonder how difficult life would have been for my children, because they would have picked up on all that anger and belief from me.
Yes. Oh, for sure. The way I am is I know how they are. I mean, our mornings are beautiful. There's not an ounce of anything negative, because I'm not. And I start my day early. I do all my morning routine that I teach. And then they wake up and they feed off my energy. I always say, like, be the thermometer, be that person. They'll all rise to that. Or if they don't, they'll just like disappear somewhere. I always tell the girls that. But what would be your advice? Because I'm sure you've worked with a lot of parents that have these terrible childhoods or hold on to these limiting beliefs, and then all of a sudden they're a parent and they're doing the same. They're just repeating. It's always on a repeat, unless you become aware like you did and I did, and you're like, wait a second, I'm not going to raise my kids. We're stopping these beliefs now and teaching them how to turn those thoughts into more empowering beliefs, and then they can start to create their life on a magical journey before they have to go down the hill and then start climbing up. We want to start climbing when they're little. So what would you say that you've seen as like a commonality in these parents that have come from that come to you and they're like, oh, Patricia, help me. I need to figure out how to have this family, like change the dynamic of the energy in the house. And I know that my beliefs are coming onto the children, and it's causing them to have these limiting beliefs. What would you say about that?
I would tell them that they have to work on them, because like you said, they are the barometer of what's going on. I'm sure we've all heard that saying, if mama's happy, everybody's happy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when mama feels good, everybody feels good. So the most important for me, I didn't really think about it back then as improving myself for my children. I wanted to improve myself. I wanted to change my life because I wanted to have a happy life.
Mm-hmm.
And the benefit, the frosting on the cake, was that it also helped my children. So if there's a parent who is saying, I don't know how to change my beliefs for my children, I would say, you have to learn how to change your beliefs for you. You got to take care of you first, because anything that happens with you will automatically be shared with your children. So the first thing is, you have to, when people start feeling triggered, everybody knows what it feels like to be triggered. You have to, and this is not easy because you've been doing this all of your life, but you have to stop and catch yourself in the moment and say, hold on a second. What is it that triggered me? I always tell people that I work with, when you're triggered, the adrenaline and cortisol will be automatically created in your body. So you may not be able to be aware in the moment when those chemicals are created. However, if you walk away, start doing some deep breathing, because that physiologically will bring your body down and stop the chemical secretions, it will calm your body so that that will stop. And once the blood flow, because the cortisol and the adrenaline and the cocktail of fight or flight takes the blood away from your head and your major organs and flows it to your limbs so that you can literally fight or flee. So you can't think logically when that's happening, when you're in the trigger mindset. So you have to, when the trigger just begins is when you have to catch yourself before it gets to a full-blown trigger. Once it gets to a full-blown trigger, the only thing you can do is to remove yourself from the trigger and start to deep breathe and bring your body down into calm so that the blood flow will restore itself. And then you can start thinking, what was that about? Why did that trigger me? What was it about that? Was it about the tone of what they said to me? Was it what's behind? Is it my perception of what that means about me?
Mm-hmm.
Because as children, when we create perceptions, we put meaning on everything because we're trying to figure out what's safe, what's not safe, how to do the world, what should I do here? So everything has a meaning. What does this mean to me? And I always tell the story, the red door story. Have you ever heard the red door story?
Yeah, well, from you, but yes.
Okay. Okay. So the red door story, should I tell the red door story?
Oh, sure.
So there were two little boys, and Bobby lived next door to Danny. And Danny always went over to Bobby's house because Bobby had better toys. And Bobby lived in a house with a red door. So every day, Danny would go over to Bobby's house and knock on the red door, and the mom would let Danny in, and he would play with Bobby in the house with the red door. And one day, when Danny went to knock on the red door, the mom, Bobby's mom, was trying on a costume for Halloween, and she had on a scary mask and a scary monster outfit, and she forgot to take it off. So when she opened the door, Danny saw the scary monster, and he was frightened and screamed and ran away. And of course, you know, she had to take the mask off, go after him, remind him that it was just her and it was just a costume, blah, blah, blah. But in that moment of that split-second moment of trauma for Danny, because his fear was intense, what that meant to him, the meaning he put on that was, open the red door, something bad happens. Red door equals something bad. Red door equals something that is frightening. So he went on to grow up to be a boy that would not wear red. He hated the color red. He wouldn't do anything with anything that had anything to do with red. He didn't even like red toys. And he grew up to be an adult that one day he's out shopping for a house with his wife, and they're looking at this perfect house in this perfect neighborhood in the perfect price, and it has a red door. And he's looking around saying, I don't know what it is about this house. I just don't like it. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about this house, and I'm not comfortable here. We can't buy this house. Okay, is so, and his wife was like, what's the matter with you? This is the perfect house. So there is the perfect example of an unrealistic or an untrue perception that he created as a child. And every single one of us have multiple red doors that we never go back and look at until something forces us to do that. And unfortunately, it's usually something crisis oriented, an illness or a death in the family, someone close to us, etc. And so that's what the workbook was about. The workbook is about forcing people to ask these questions before they have to get to a crisis or a devastating moment in their life, like to go back and visit what these limiting beliefs are that you created that are a completely false perception.
Right. I always say that. I always say you think they're true because you think they're true because you say they're true or you believe it, and they're not true. And just stop believing those. Let's switch it.
Absolutely. They're not true. And so I created this formula called DARE your belief. So it's an acronym. So D is for discover. So it's the discovery of what is this belief that I have? Why am I triggered by
Right.
X, Z?
So, and so let's go slower. So so to explain, like when you get triggered, when something affects you, when your vibration goes down, someone in traffic or at the grocery store, your husband and wife, something's going on, you stop and you're like, wait a second, what is that? What does that mean? What is my limiting belief in that moment?
Yes.
And then
yes.
start to prove it wrong. So
And then you may not get an answer. I know for me, because my beliefs were so deeply ingrained, I could ask, but it might take me several days to come up with the answer. We all have the answer. We know. But sometimes it's scary for us to know the answer. Sometimes knowing the answer feels very, very scary. So sometimes the answer won't come up for a while. And I have, in times of my life, knowing that I had the answer, said to myself, it's safe to know. It's safe to know. It's safe for me to know what this is about. It's safe for me to know what this is about. And like within days, then the answer would come to me. But sometimes if the answer was something that was going to be painful when it came up, I had to tell myself that it was safe to know. And I'd tell my subconscious, it's safe to know, because that's what our subconscious does, is it protects us from things that we're afraid of. So, so the idea is to look at what the trigger is, what's behind it. And like I said, you may not know at that moment in time, but stay on course, stay with that thought, stay like, I know there's something there. I need to know, like, pay attention to your intuition, pay attention to your gut, because you do know. And then once you realize what it is, now you can, so that's the discovery part. Now, the assessment part is, so where did that come? I assess this. Does this serve me? Does this limit me? Does this do anything good? Can I let go of it? So then we do this assessment. Yes, I think I can let go of this, but the only way to let go, because it's so ingrained, is you have to really be disciplined about catching yourself each time. And it's not that once you discover it that you won't have that trigger anymore. The process will be that you'll still have a trigger, but it will be much milder and much more aware of it.
Right.
And then the time after that, it will be even more mild and you'll be even more aware of it. And eventually you'll get to a part where it won't be a trigger at all.
Right. And I know, but you always have that limiting belief. Sorry, but you always have that. It's always going to be part of you, but
Yes.
it's the awareness and the not reacting thing.
Correct.
That's where you get that neutrality.
This doesn't mean what I think it means.
Right.
Like people say, if there's one word of advice, what would you say to people? And I would say, always question your beliefs, because most of them are not true.
Right.
And then, so that's the assessment part. And then the R in DARE is the reconstruct. So we're going to reconstruct a belief system that's based on what you do want your life to be, what you believe that you can have in your life, do you want a new job? Do you want a new relationship? Whatever that is, we're going to reconstruct a belief that allows you to receive that, because our limiting beliefs create a roadblock that we do not allow ourselves to receive what we want.
Right.
We have to reconstruct our belief to support what we do want. And then the E is to keep expanding that. That's the DARE of belief. Discover, assess, reconstruct, and keep expanding on it.
Right. And so when you teach these, I can see your clients coming and, you get them to figure out, like, when they trigger that they have limiting beliefs, let's figure them out. And I have a form that we use in my class called a manifestation event form. And so you write down the limit. It's a lot of work, but once you get those down and you've proven them false, and you're like proving it false. And then all of a sudden you read it in a week and you're like, wow, I've really come a long way. If you put the work in and you really, you put the form in, you fill the form out. In my case, I really see, and that's why I think it's so, like, it's just an amazing tool, is when you get triggered or you have something that affects you, that brings your vibration down. It's just basically that brings you from this high flying disc, like Abraham Hicks, to this, like, below that level. Anything below that level is, I believe, is even, there's a limiting belief there because you would be on that high flying disc.
Right, because
So
we're born to be at the vibration of love.
yes. And that's all there is. And that's why it's people, I'm like, all there is love, be
Mhm.
love, give love, and look at everything with love.
Mhm.
And everything in your reality is love.
Absolutely.
The
When we
one thing that you don't see as love is because you have a limiting belief that you think is false.
have these blinders on and you
Right.
can't see it for what it really is, which is love. I look at my 4-month-old granddaughter, and I think she's just a big ball of love. That's the way all of us were. And so now I think, I have to make sure that all the things that happened to her life, that she has realistic beliefs about whatever happens, because children create false perceptions all the time based on. So I worked with a man who he really had no problems growing up as a child. He lived in he and his brother lived with a mother and father who, provided a very nice life for them. There was no, dysfunction, whatever. But he always felt that he wasn't loved by his father. Well, as it turns out, when we started to get into the whole belief thing, it turns out that his father was a very stern, undemonstrative person. He didn't say, I love you. In his world, he proved that he loved his family by providing for them and, being home every night and, that kind of thing. Like, it didn't occur to him, because he wasn't brought up that way, that he should be demonstrative about telling his children he loved them, etc. So this young man grew up, when he would go out and see other fathers saying to his friends, I love you, son. I love you, good luck. Being demonstrative, giving them hugs, things like that, things that his father did not do. As a child, he thought that meant that he was unlovable.
Mm-hmm.
So he grew up to have low self-esteem. And when he got to his teenage years, which that always, once they get to the teenage years and those hormones kick in, if there's a little bit of anger there, there'll be a lot of anger. It just exacerbates everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got very angry. He was an angry teen, and he had a very difficult relationship with his father, and he never could understand why. And when we went back to that's what it really came down to. And his entire adulthood was based on this belief that he wasn't lovable and he wasn't enough, based on a false perception as a child.
Right. And if people understand how, I don't want to say easy, but if you place an awareness on those things like that, and how you can change it so quickly, that it's just having that awareness that, that could change the whole trajectory of your life,
It's the awareness, but it's also the practice.
Right.
'Cause
Yes, it's the muscle. I always call it the muscle. Like, you got to get the muscle. Like, you can't go to the gym like twice a month and think you're going to be this bodybuilder, right?
Yes. You got to do it like every day, moment to moment. You have to be aware of your triggers. And
Yes.
once you practice it and you realize that what's causing the trigger is a false perception, then it becomes easier and easier and easier.
Yes. What do you
can change the trajectory of your life?
Yes. And it's powerful, and we are so powerful. Yes. And I think when you say teenager and the hormones, and, I am in the middle of my, 12 and 15-year-old daughters, but, it's interesting because, there's hormones and I get it. But I've really, programmed them my whole life, because I didn't have them till I was 37 and 40. So I had all that time before to understand, how important programming, what you're doing as a mother, parent, from 0 to 7 or 0 to 8 or whatever, that those times that we as parents are really like a computer, putting everything that we believe inside of our babies. And I look at my daughters now in their teens, and just as a gratitude moment of, wow, thank God I was aware. Thank God I was so intentional about raising them with the mindset, because they'll go, it's so cute, because now at their age, I see it all come to life, because now they're, more on their own and more independent, and they have to make decisions and, their little core values. And, now with this, my Raising Confidence class, seeing my students do the same thing, which is just, it just lights me up. It's definitely like you feel passionate about it, like to the point where I wake up at 4 and I get so excited. But, you see kids that you don't have to talk about the teenage hormone years as this awful nightmare, because it's beautiful. It can be beautiful. It's really, it's like a limiting belief. It's like, I'm waiting for that. It's like almost a terrible twos. Like when my kid turns 2, oh, watch out. When they turn 2, it's going to be terrible. Okay, well, I'm glad that you think that, but I'm not going to make mine terrible, because I'm not going to talk about it being terrible. I'm going to talk about it being amazing.
Then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once
Exactly.
the world, it becomes self-fulfilling.
Right. Well, I even let's talk about health. So with the way Louise Hay always, put out in the world, it's a dis-ease, a dis-ease. So if you think of it that way, and even like there was a commercial saying free flu shots, get it while the flu season's here. I'm just like, that's apart from the COVID, but I'm like, oh, well, we better go get it, because we're going to get the flu, okay. It's like, go put let's go get that. So, when you think of how, you raise children and they're and how we were raised, our limiting beliefs that are always programmed, and new parents, like if they're listening, just remember, like those years are so crucial to understanding that, gosh, you can change the trajectory of that little baby into this know right away when they get to their teens that they're so empowered, they can do anything and nothing's going to stop them. No one can trigger them. They think they're on their own journey. I'm on mine. Send them love, be in love. And if someone's a bully to you, send them love. I tell the girls all the time, like they're hurting, just send them love and smile. They don't know what obviously you wouldn't do that. So just send them love. But to know in this world we are in today, with these children being raised with social media and all the things that they have that we never had, that we don't even know the effects of, but we're now like kind of seeing that whole thing, especially with COVID for the last 2 years, like throwing that into their little life and their childhood, and like they're going to have a story of COVID, in their childhood and how they had to be at home and, didn't have social interaction with friends. Like what are those things that are programming in their little mind? Did the parents have an awareness that, this is happening for you, not to you? This is for your best. This is why it's in your life. It's for the best of your growth. And let's look at the beauty of it. What do you think? What about you and the COVID and all those kind of things? And even the way that you believe in Louise Hay and her dis-ease of.
Well, I think that there's so much anxiety around all of this. Unfortunately, there's not as many parents like you to help guide their children through a mentally healthy experience with COVID. I think that unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are having anxiety and are creating more crises in their life with jobs and not having enough money, or not being able to pay the rent or the mortgage or whatever that is. I think that there's a lot of negativity going on, and I think that the result of that will be that there will be more of these children who will grow up to be anxious adults, unfortunately.
Oh, for sure.
And I think it's our job. I hope that there's many, many more people who will be helping these people change their belief system because of all of this thing that happened with COVID. I think that we're going to see a lot more fear-based activity. Look at what's going on in our culture. The people are so angry. Going to a school board meeting and talking about masking, can cause a violent interaction. I've never seen that in my lifetime. Right. There's so much anger, and anger is always comes from fear. So there's so much fear and anger out there. And I think that we're going to see some adults, kind of grow up to be that. So I think it's really, really important for anyone who wants to be aware that they start teaching their own children right now what, how to live a life without limiting beliefs, without fear, really knowing that whatever's going on, it is what it is. By being anxious about it, by worrying about it, doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't change it. All it does is make it harder for you. So you just have to accept this is what it is. I mean, I'm living through COVID. My family's living for COVID, but we just do as normal activities as we can. No one's afraid. In the beginning, we all wore masks. We all washed our hands. We didn't touch things, because in the beginning, nobody knew how this was being spread.
Right.
We just paid attention to what we needed to do to protect ourselves. But there was no, oh my God, what are we going to do? There was none of that stuff. And so, we all got through it okay, but there's a lot of people out there who are still going, oh my God, what are we going to do? And we need to help them. And when we see them reacting and being triggered, and they will be triggered by some really mild things, just because there's so much bubbling beneath the surface. And it could be as mild as, look at that poor little boy who was shot, I think it was in California. The mother must have inadvertently, without realizing, cut somebody else off, and somebody got a gun out and shot at the car and killed her child.
Yeah. Oh, that was awful.
That's what I mean. Like, it was, that person was triggered by being cut off. Like, talk about like a mild trigger. You would think, why would someone shoot? But they're so in fear and anger over so many other things that's going on in my life. It wasn't about being cut off. It was about their fear. It was about their anger. And that was just like the last straw for them for that day. And then they became violent. So I think we as adults have to pay attention when we see people who are being mean, who are being, bullying. Even as adults that we're being bullied, that we have to recognize that these are people with triggers, hair triggers, because they're so filled with fear and anger, and that we just have to, like you said, send love, like just, whoa, step back, realize what's going on with them. This has nothing to do with me. They could call me all the names in the book, but this is their stuff. This is not about me. This is about them. And the reality is when you, if someone comes at you, and then you come back at them, the two of you like, you just spiral up. But if that person comes at you and then you say, I am not going to feed that, I am going to pull away from it and allow it to spiral down on its own, then it will. But you can't feed it. You have to say something kind. You have to say something nice. And as soon as you come back with a higher vibrational retort or reaction, it brings them down to your level of energy instead of you feeding theirs and the two of you going up to a place that's out of control.
Right. Oh, yes. I love it. And we're coming to the end. And how do people find you, Patricia?
My website is patriciaheitz.com.
And what's your new, what are you working toward right now? What do you see what are you working toward in the?
I'm working on another book called From Surviving to Thriving. And it's using the crisis moments in your life to springboard into thriving. So you learn your lesson. So this happened to me. And it doesn't mean I have met in the world of cancer, I have met so many people who their labels, and it was such a traumatic experience to be diagnosed with a cancer, whatever it was, that becomes their label. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a cancer survivor. And they keep using the word cancer over and over. And it keeps them in a place of survival. So I realized that after meeting many people and, running into them in a personal place, not just at a cancer support group, but running into them. And like, it's the first thing out of their mouth when they meet other people. Hi, I'm a cancer survivor. And I'm like, wow, they really live in that cancer survival.
Yes.
So
the labels. I just get crazy.
Saying, yes, this is what happened to me. However, this is what I learned from it. And this is how I'm going to use that lesson to make my life better. So
Right.
that's what the book will be about.
Yeah, I love it. Because, when people label things or they call themselves, I have this or I have that, I'm like, okay, well, then you do. Because your word is your wand and you can have whatever you say. So if that's what you want, well, let's keep talking about it.
I was watching a show last night where it was a documentary about people with addictions, and these are people that they're like, oh, I'm just an addict, so I work to get money for drugs, and I'm like, now that's your label, so you have to live up to it.
Yeah.
They're
There you
not
go.
changing their label.
Right. Yeah. And I don't, I work with children and, when I hear them say they have, these certain limiting beliefs from, their parents are telling them what they have. So they're telling me what they have. And I said, well, you only have that because you're telling me you have it, because you really don't.
I'm not smart. I'm not pretty.
Yes. Right.
I'm not good at sports. Whatever it is,
Right.
someone's told them that,
Yeah.
or they created that belief based on, nothing comes to anyone that easily. Yeah, there are some people who have natural talents to be towards something, but that's not everybody. Most of us have to work very hard to get good at something.
Right.
Because you fall down the first time doesn't mean that you're not good at it. You just have to practice.
Right. Exactly. Oh, I'm in that mode right now with my girls, like the school, getting back to school and, studying it every year, now Paige is in high school. So, we're getting ready for college. Like, you're on your own, you need to figure this out, call your teachers, you do it. It's now self-led, not mom-led. You get to that place where you gotta let the reins go and empower them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, Patricia, it was great. It's been an hour and I appreciate you. And it was so fun meeting you and talking about something that really lights me up and
thank you.
makes me, like just this work of having this podcast and meeting you and meeting people that will share this message that if you learn these beliefs that you believe are true, aren't, and can start living this life that I really feel like I'm living right now. And you are too, like, to live this life. We only get to be here this one moment, like live in the now and have this amazing feeling like, oh my gosh, I get so excited for the next hour. What do I get to do after I get off with you? I seriously think that way. Oh my gosh, I get to pick up Paige in an hour.
Okay, what are we going to do next?
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's what life should be lived. And I love that we're here to share that.
I would like to just leave the thought with being that everybody is so anxious and so angry and so fearful at this moment in our culture, at this moment in our history, is to just be aware, be kind, and recognize that this is not about you. And the more people that can bring their vibration up, discover what their limiting beliefs are, and live in a better life for themselves, it becomes a tipping point for the rest of us in the world.
Yes, for sure.
See,
our vibration is a reflection of everyone around. I always say, like, if you can work on yourself, that changes everything else. Like,
absolutely.
Realize the power that you have from just being happy. That's all. It's like, just be happy. Like, find something that makes you happy. And that's all I ask. Just find, if it doesn't, change it.
Very powerful.
Yes. On that note, Patricia, thank you so much for being here with me.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.